Welcome back, you guys, to the Get Rek'd podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We are on week 6. I can't believe it. We both feel like we have a lot to say this week, so it may be divided up into 2 videos. We'll just see how it goes. We've both got the Dax Savage today. It has been a day already.
Cheers.
A good day, though. Cheers.
Yeah, we're a little sweaty. We did some training outside, so we are, yeah, but it was good. And we're excited to be here now and ready to get this done.
Yeah. All right, so we are starting on day 36.
Yep.
I'll let Lars go ahead and go first.
Yeah. So, day 36 is love does not covet. And it gives us Romans 7:8. Sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandment, produced in me coveting of every kind. And yeah, so this week is going to be pretty, you know, most of the time I learn from these and I'm reflecting pretty well and they might hit home, but this week's pretty heavy for me. I definitely got wrecked. But it's just the things that I deal with or have to struggle through or whatever. And so this day specifically talks about, you know, jealousy and coveting things that others have, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that I don't want to, but that I do covet about, you know, that others have that I don't. You know, like specifically, you know, thinking about some of the people who I used to work with and seeing where they are now and what they're doing now and stuff like that. And how much I easily slip into, you know, jealousy or whatever. And of course, the only things we're seeing are like the best things, right? That's the problem with social media today, right? It's cool because you can keep in touch with people or get in touch with people that you maybe weren't able to, you know, before. But it's also really dangerous because you're only seeing the best parts of everything that's going on. And, you know, there's so many things, so many paths that I'd hope to walk down or whatever. And because of my injury, you know, now I'm watching other people do it, right? And that's pretty difficult sometimes. And something that I'm working on, sort of really developing, and the thing that I've noticed the most is that I really have to let go of a lot of my past, right? And I really have to let go because I do kind of covet it or hold on to it, right? I am proud of the things I used to do, and I am proud of, you know, the effort and work and grit that I had to have to do a lot of the things that I used to do. But the reality is and what all of this experience, you know, the past, I guess, 7 years now, right, has shown me is, yeah, because I got injured 7 years and, well, 7 years and 4 days, right?
I thought it was the 30th.
No, it was 25th.
Oh.
So I think, I don't know, it doesn't matter. But, you know, the thing that this 7 years has shown me is I had spent 10 years of my life dedicated towards one cause and doing things very, very, you know, and doing it very well and feeling like I was in the right place, even when there were plenty of times that I was not happy with where I was. I'd end up finding out why I was there, you know, and why that mattered and how that helped me in the next step. And I think that's true for everything. But the one thing I've realized is so many of the things that we go after, so many of the things that people think are great or whatever, they mean nothing if just one thing changes, right? Yeah. All those things that happened before, you know, and there's a saying sort of, you know, in the world that I, you know, used to live in or whatever, which is, doesn't matter who you were yesterday if you suck today, right? And I think that's, you know, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that's essentially the notion.
Yeah. And
that fits my life today so very much in that, you know, yeah, I could just sit around and do nothing, right? And it wouldn't matter what I did before. And there are some people that do that, right? That are resting on their laurels or whatever, and they don't do anything with it. They're not doing anything today to help any cause or whatever. And that's true even, and I'm not saying that I do anything special, because I don't think I ever was special. I don't think I really am special in any way. I think the most special thing about me is God and Christ. And that's the thing that no matter what changes, paralyzed, not paralyzed, world upside down, world right side up, doesn't matter, right? No matter what happens in the world, we could lose everything tomorrow and we're stuck living in the woods, right? And the one constant would be God and the love that we're learning to develop. And so that's kind of, those are the things that I struggle with, because, and then, we'll take this to the next step, right? And you see these people that are wasting their bodies, totally able-bodied, except that they won't exercise or they won't eat right, or they're, putting things in their bodies that they really shouldn't, right? Drugs, alcohol, whatever. They have some sort of problem and they're doing these things. And I have literally said many, many times, not so often more recently, just because I'm really trying to grow. But, when I first got injured, I used to look at people all the time and I'd be like, dude, I will literally, if I could trade bodies with you for 6 weeks, just give me 6 weeks with your body, I will make it so that and we can trade back after. I promise you I will make you be in a better position than you are today. Or I would do anything to be able to get up and walk across the hall or whatever, And so, but that's all, those are the things, that's the resistance grabbing a hold of me, because then I don't see those people, I don't see them with love.
Yeah.
Right? They're like my enemies almost. And that's not.
It's like immediate irritation with them.
Yeah. And you have less patience, and so you're more likely to run into anger, right? All the things we've been learning up to this point. And it all comes from coveting, right? It all comes from jealousy. It all comes from desire, right? These lusts.
Yeah.
And, so these are the things that I struggle with quite a bit. And so this week it's basically all about that. And so there are a lot of times that I get, that I was reading or we're going through this and I'm like, oh man, okay. And so then, it's funny because it brings up things like spousal attention. And, is your spouse getting all the attention or whatever? And I guess in my old line of work, that was a really big thing, right? The whole world's about the guys, right? And so sometimes a lot of wives can't work through that, right? And we don't understand how to interact or, give them the proper respect that they deserve too, in the way that they're, giving, so that we could do what we were doing or whatever. And so I think that's big, but just it's funny, but that's not one of the things we really struggle with, I don't think, a whole lot. So this week's dare, which I think we can get into here in a second if you don't mind reading it, but actually wasn't, it's funny because I actually pray it or looked at it a little differently, because there aren't very many things that I look at you and I'm jealous of, right? Or so I don't know, how about you read it real quick, just so that I'm not talking about it in everybody's. It
says, ask the Lord to reveal any areas of jealousy or resentment in your heart toward your spouse. Admit this to God and ask for forgiveness, then dare to ask your spouse for forgiveness as well. Which I really like that they added that other part, because I do think it's really important to communicate any of those things with your spouse.
Well, and I think that might be why we don't really struggle with it too much, because there have been times where, I'm man, I feel like we're giving all our time to this.
Yeah.
And I realize my batteries are running low.
Yeah. And it was true, because when I cut back on that thing, specifically in my mind, we both were so much more happy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I think, but that's where we you know, we've kind of figured that out. Like, we did that before we've taken this dare or whatever, but it's something that we've noticed. Like, when I start to get irritated, it's, you know, about something, me specifically or whatever, it's because I feel like I'm missing time somewhere or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's not so much that I'm like jealous of you, like you, right? It's, there's something about it that I feel like I'm not, well, I guess I am jealous. I guess I am jealous of you in that way, right? Or whatever, in those moments. Like, if all the time's going in a certain direction, you know, going somewhere, then I'm like, man, I wish I had some time, you know, with you myself or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so we figure that out, you know, and we...
well, I'm thinking about it. Can we play Scrabble tonight?
Scrabble. Sure.
Thanks.
You're all tall now. I'm like over here trying to...
It's more comfortable on my back. Should I beep down a little bit more?
I don't know if you can. I feel like I'm craning over here, like trying to get tall, but I don't have any tall.
There.
There we go. This is a little better. Yeah, I can look at you.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So, yeah, I mean, that's why this week was rough. But I think we've already been kind of doing this dare, right? We talk about it. And, you know, if we're having those sort of feelings or whatever, and we fix it. We're really good about that. So I think where this kind of wrecks me is there are some people I think I definitely need to reach out to and, you know, quote unquote, ask for forgiveness, right? For the way that I covet some of the things that they do, right? Or whatever.
That's
some
great.
people that I specifically avoid, right? Because of some of the things that occurred, you know, like specifically around my injury and stuff like that.
This makes me a little emotional. I mean, that's a huge realization, you know, and it gives you freedom.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I don't know. The other thing is, like, specifically the people that I'm thinking about, right, are not. We'll get into the prodigal son here in a couple days, right? Oh, it's day 37, so I guess we can move on to day 37.
Sure.
Right, which is love lays down its rights, and it gives us John 5:30, which is, my judgment is righteous, because I do not seek my own will, but the will of him who sent me. And then it starts talking about the story of the prodigal son. And to most people, if you don't know the story of the prodigal son, more or less, there are two sons, one father. The youngest son decides to ask his father, very young, says, I want all my inheritance, and I'm out. And specifically in, you know, Jewish culture, especially at the time, asking for your inheritance was basically telling your parent you wish they were dead. And so the youngest son looks at his dad, says, I wish you were dead. I'm leaving. I don't like you. I don't want to be a part of you. I don't want to help the farm. I don't want to do any of that. And he went off and he, you know, did all the bad things you could do with money. And then he went dirt poor, completely bankrupt, had nothing, and to the point that he was going to have to sell himself into slavery. And so he returns home, and he's basically sells himself to his dad because he already got his inheritance. So he didn't have anything. It's not like his dad can give him anything.
Yeah.
And he says, just let me be a slave in your house at least, please. And the dad throws a party because he's so happy that his son came home, right? And that his son is safe. And a lot of people take that as, oh, the prodigal son is the youngest son because he's the one who went off and then he came back, you know, as prodigal and came back. And like, that's how God looks at all of us when we leave the fold and then return, right? Because every time we're sitting there, our inheritance is heaven. And how many people turn away from that? I mean, we all do it, right? We all sin. But every time we turn back and every time we correct that, a party's thrown in heaven, basically, is the point of the parable, right? But then one of the most important parts, I think, especially for those of us that are, you know, trying to get wrecked on the regular or whatever, right, is the oldest son's part in this story, who stayed behind, worked, back-breaking labor with his dad day in and day out, for years, while his younger brother disrespected the whole family, didn't care, went off and had all the fun partying, doing all the crazy stuff, right? And then he gets a party. He gets the biggest party that the oldest son's ever seen. Mm-hmm. What the heck? Like, why don't I get a party? And so he's like, and so he actually won't go in and party with the rest of the family and everybody who's there. And the dad comes out and he's like, why aren't you coming inside? Why aren't you hanging out? And he says, I've literally done all these things. I've been the good son, right? Why don't I get a party? You've never thrown one for me. And there are two things about this. The father looks at him and he says, this is true, but everything that I have, everything that is mine, will be yours one day. And while your brother was off doing what he was doing, you got to spend every day with me. And those two things are really important, because I think we all go, okay, I get it. One day we get to go to heaven or whatever, right? And I think everybody's like, yeah, but it kind of sucks now watching everybody, in the world who's doing all these bad things or whatever, right? They get all the good stuff. And I get this. I get paralyzed or whatever, right? I mean, that's certainly thoughts that I've had. Speaking of the people that I think I need to reach out to and whatever, I have certainly thought, like, why? I did all the right stuff. I did all the things I was supposed to do. Worked really hard. I sacrificed a lot of things for a very long time so that I could be in all the right places. I was in all the right places. I was doing all the right things. I went through a lot of crappy situations, and all these things. And I'm like, and I've been trying to be a good Christian man all this time. These people go out and they do all kinds of crazy stuff. They have no respect for, women, people, whatever, and so on. And they're living the life that I worked so hard to live.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but the reality is, and I've seen this in interactions with other people, right? Mostly, is what we miss is that I got to spend all those days, though, all those times it was really hard. I still had God in my corner, and I still had that hope, right? And how many people today are walking around and don't have that? That's why I think there's so many problems with like mental health now.
Yeah.
Because if you're the eldest son, and you're seeing all these people who don't give a crap about anything, and they're terrible people, and you're like, why is this my lot? Why would you be good? Right? That's the reality. Mm-hmm. If there's no God, if there's no moral, if there's no heaven, right? If there's no God, if there's no greater moral authority, why would you be good? He doesn't give you anything, really, when you look at the way so many people... and it's one of those things that I think is a problem in the church too, which is all these people, and please don't think that please don't think that I'm talking crap about anybody in this way. I'm not, but there's so many people who, their story is this story of drugs, alcohol, addiction, whatever, right? And now they've been saved, right? And they're rock stars. And then you've got, Joe Bob, who's just been a good father, a good husband his whole life, doesn't get any of the big rock star money because he doesn't have the cool story, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, this guy got to do all the fun stuff that I made sure I didn't do.
Yeah.
But guess what? All those times, that person felt a million times worse. We think it's fun, but that's because we have the perspective of God being there the whole time. and think about the guilt, the shame, the discomfort that they felt every single time. And they didn't have the hope of God,
Yeah.
right, through all of that. And that's huge. You know, in all those hard times, at least you had your dad to lean on,
Yeah.
right? You know, I mean, my dad was huge to lean on when I got hurt, you know? Thank God he just retired.
Yeah.
And so he was able to spend time with me, right? And those experiences mean so much more than all the bad stuff could have been doing, right? None of that, because again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, none of it means anything. All the parties you had and those guys had in college, all the parties those guys had, you know, doing whatever, it means nothing if they were to be in my shoes now, right? It means nothing to them now, right?
Yeah.
10 years later, 7 years later, whatever. It means nothing now. And so, but all those experiences that I had that were rough, or God helped me to grow, or whatever, helped me to be ready for where I am now, right? And so, I guess what I want to say is like, it's almost, it breaks my heart almost when I think about these people that are suffering, that don't have God to give them that hope.
Yeah.
And it really changes my perspective on, man, I'm so glad that I had that experience with, you know, my family and, you know, so on. And my experience is feeling like,
I'm just turning it down.
no, it's okay. You know, and that made me start to seek more knowledge and understanding of the story of the prodigal son, because I had a very rudimentary understanding, right? Just like, oh yeah, God's happy whenever we return to the fold, right?
Yeah.
Party gets done.
I mean, that's how
But-
a lot of people explain it.
But man, really diving deep, really starting to understand the context and the culture and so on, changed my perspective so much and helped me to see, you know, and then when we get into this week and we're taught, and I'm thinking about all these things, it hits me and I go, yeah, I need to work on that, right? There are people that I, at the very least, need to, you know, reach out to or let actually reach me, because some of them have now, you know, years later decided to reach out to me or whatever. And I need to accept that instead of continuing to avoid it, mostly because I know it creates really negative emotions. You know, like,
Yeah.
I hate social media, and I know that it's dangerous for me,
Yeah.
right? Because I will latch on to, if I start seeing all the things that other people are doing, or, you know, or seeing where people are. I mean, even just people with their kids,
Yeah.
right? That's big. And so, and the families they have or whatever, I'm like, man, like, I know what that guy used to be like or whatever. And I'm like, that's crazy. You know, but I need to have love for them and be happy for them. And so that's where I need, you know, my reflection and my work on this is. And so that's why this week wrecked me, really. But I wanted to know, I noticed you had some things to say about day 37, so I need to shut up because I've been talking for like, I don't know, way too long now.
No, it's been.
But then I also wanted to read Matthew 26:36 through 42.
I wanted to read that as well.
So maybe we can pull
I'll
that
pull
up.
it up.
And then I'd love to hear your points. I'm sorry.
No,
Just
you're.
this week, it was a good week for me. You know, I literally was saying as we were getting ready for this and I was brushing my teeth, because you guys care so much about smelling my breath, but she probably does. You know, I was like, okay. I literally yelled out to you, you know, this week's a good week
Yeah.
because it got me good.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the whole point, to get
mean-
wrecked, right?
I think you sharing all that is way more important and from the heart, and you know, this kind of gem that God gave you, and I would so much rather you talk the whole time than me say one word. So I don't care.
Yeah, but your insights are important, and like the spiritual discernment thing, right? You're going to see something different, and not everybody's going to be seeing the things that I see.
Yeah, but
And so
I don't have that many golden nuggets per se.
oh my gosh, she does. She just doesn't give herself enough credit, trust me.
So Matthew 26, starting on verse 36. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called,
Gethsemane.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't. Not.
Tough word.
Gethsemane.
And he said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour? He asked Peter, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away a second time and prayed, my Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. When he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer.
I think we went a little further than 42, but
Oh,
that's okay.
shoot. I thought it was 36 to 46. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So I think the important line is when Jesus asks, my Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done.
And I think that's a big sort of verse for us too,
Yes.
right? Because we believe in miracles. We believe in,
I have a coaster.
I don't right next to me. I think they're all over by you. It's all
Keep
right.
going.
Don't worry
So we
about it.
believe in miracles, and
So, and we believe that, healing can occur, right? And one day, and we definitely, I don't know, I don't have any doubt in my mind that one day I'll get up out of this chair, and who knows, maybe that's when, God takes me back into his fold, right? I don't know. But I know that one day I will. And one of the things that's, and this is a little off topic, so I won't go too far into it, and it's a whole nother video that we can do, and I think it's a good one to sit there and talk about too. But, when people pray for us or whatever, understanding that, and helping them to understand that it's not that your faith is too weak or our faith isn't there or, whatever. Please don't, be diminished because I didn't get up out of the chair at the moment you prayed for me, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just not in God's time yet, right?
Yeah.
Even if God wasn't, knew it was best that Christ go through his trials and tribulations, then how much more should I be willing to accept it, right? And that's not to, not that I think I deserve this,
yeah.
right? Not that I think that this is my lot or that I want it, but you know what? I'm going to keep working to learn the lessons I can learn through it, right? How many things here am I getting wrecked because of this?
Yeah.
A lot of the things we relate to are because of my injury, right? It's helped me learn so much.
Yeah.
I've literally said that if you went back 7 years ago and you said, okay, if you take this turn, you're going to be injured, and I know you're going to get unparalyzed in this amount of time, but you're going to learn this. Or you can stay on the path you're on, and you're not going to learn any of those things. I would pick learning what I've learned every time. Just because, I'm also super blessed, and I've got a wonderful wife and so on. So I really can't complain. And you know, I don't know how we would have met otherwise, but
who knows?
you know, so I really can't complain too much, you know, but man, I've learned so much, and I've become, hopefully, I'm a better man than I was before. And so I'm grateful in that regard, you know, and I'm certainly more focused on God.
Yeah.
You know, I had my idols. I didn't see them that way at the time.
Yeah.
Right? I thought I was being a good Christian man. You know, I literally got made fun of, called Tim Tebow, because, you know, every morning, very first thing I did, you know, the moment I got out of the cot, was read a verse from the Bible, you know, or whatever. And everywhere I went, there's a tiny little pocket Bible in my back pocket, you know. So I mean, there was a Bible in my back pocket when I got hurt, right? So it's just one of those, I thought I was on the right path, but there were certainly things that I idolized and that I was putting ahead of definitely putting ahead of growing as a man of Christ.
Yeah.
So this is big. This helps me a lot. You know, I mean, even the past 7 years, I've learned a lot in, you know, from, even if we take away the injury part of it, right? All the things that have happened and the good stuff that we see sprinkled throughout, if I would have gotten those things a month earlier, wouldn't have been the same, right? Wouldn't have been as prepared. And so, grateful. Yeah. And I'm glad that I'm on this path with you and you guys and continuing to learn and whatever. So, anyway, please tell me your points. I apologize.
No,
like I said, we're only on day 2 of this week. I'm talking way too much.
So I don't know if we read the heading for day 2. Did we? Day 2 is
no.
Love Lays Down Its Rights.
Day 37, sorry. Day 2 of the week, but
yeah.
Day 37, Love Lays Down Its Rights. Right.
So I'm trying to think of how to word my thoughts here, but basically what I got from the day is it doesn't matter how good of a spouse you are, how much you love, how much you sacrifice and whatever, you don't ever actually deserve anything. And
yeah, I totally, you know, I was getting the same thoughts reading through this, and you know, one of my favorite phrases about none of us deserve anything, right? We just better work our butt off to get there.
yeah.
And I think there are some things I want to talk about later in the week too, about some people that we were kind of heartbroken about, that we learned about this week, right? And it has to do with spouses and thinking you deserve something, right?
Yeah.
And thinking you do all these things or whatever.
Yeah.
And
well, my question was, how many marriages fail because someone said I deserve happiness? I mean, that was in there, but I just thought that was so many marriages.
well, and they don't.
And it's not to say that I don't have sympathy for the suffering that can go on in a marriage. I certainly understand that there are a lot of relationships that are so difficult and painful and sad and just horrible. But
Imagine the happiness, though, if you made it through that
yeah.
and what you see at the end.
But how many people's marriages aren't actually suffering that bad?
Yeah.
And it's all total selfish, total me, and they get divorces over and over and over again. And, you know.
And there's a lack of perspective, right? Your wife's been pregnant basically, you know, all 3-4 years you've been married. And, you know, so now you've got many kids, right? You've got 3 kids, one of them brand new, and all these things, right? And you're like, well, we just don't have the same spark, that we used to have. It's like, well, yeah, you're running around
It's like,
with 3 kids.
No crap, you're raising
Most
humans.
of the time, you know, your wife's been pregnant, which is a whole nother shebang, right?
Hormones,
of hormones
and yeah.
you know, not wanting to be that super, you know, you don't have the energy to do the stuff that you probably would have done at the beginning, right? And, you know, I mean, we understand hormones really, really well, right? And how, man, it's terrible when they're not right.
Yeah.
And then, but the person that I see at work gives me that little spark, right? And it's like, well, yeah, you don't have any of the responsibility there that you have back home.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee that if you flipped the people, right? If you just swapped them, that it would probably be the same or worse, right? And that just breaks my heart. And
That's something you should say.
I mean, I've tried, you know, and it's hard to see because it's very easy to miss the good things that your spouse does for you.
Yeah.
Right? Or the little thing. And that's why it's so important to reflect on your life. And the questions that we're going to get to at the end of the week, right? Ask those questions of yourself regularly. Write them down and go back into your notebook and go, where am I at now? Because, and that's why this Love Dare is really cool. Is because it's it forces us to do it, right? I mean, we could choose not to read, but like we're spending that time and learning, right? And forcing ourselves to think about, the good times we have. You know, we say all the time, like, how many times have we started laughing in the middle of a really, really crappy situation? Maybe literally. And we just start laughing about the stupidest crap.
Yeah.
Calmly put the glove on. But, just like so funny. And in the time, it's like, that should not be funny.
Yeah.
But it's freaking hilarious. And it's because...
Well, I'm thankful.
What? Oh, okay.
Sorry. But I'm thankful that God has given us that perspective, because for me personally, that was something I prayed about a lot. To not get frustrated, to not, and He certainly answered that prayer. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure sometimes I give off the stressed, but it is stressful things, and that's okay. But I don't feel how I used to feel, and it has allowed me to laugh and find fun memories in those hard moments.
Yeah, I mean...
Should we go to day 38?
Yeah, so love is not bitter, and it gives us Colossians 3:19. Husbands, love your wives, and don't become bitter against them. So the big thing I want to do here is read Ephesians 4:31. Thankfully, I don't have too much to talk about this. But we really have to work to not be bitter, right?
Yeah.
And not hold things for granted. Like, not look at things and go, why didn't they notice this? Why didn't they do that? Right? Because if you do that, it's going to grow.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot, and that's one of the most important things about communicating. And why it's annoying probably, or frustrating, because sometimes I'm like, no, we got to talk about this now. Or, or I'll be like, hey, I'm just telling you this, not because I'm trying to, I don't know, I'm talking about myself. Ray does similar things, but, it's just easier for me to remember the times that I've said, been like, hey, I don't like this, right? or I'm not really liking what's going on right now, or whatever. And it's like, was it really important to say that? Probably not. But I also don't want it to become a habit or something. And then I'm like, and then I hold bitterness in, right? And so I sort of, hey, I'm just telling you right now because I hope that we can work through it, or not do that again, or whatever. And and you do the same thing with me or whatever. Like, hey, would you please just do the dishes? Like, yeah, I should have done them. I'm sorry, or whatever. Like, and little things like that, because you're super busy and you didn't have time to do them or whatever, and then adding to that. And so we have to communicate about that and not hold it in. Like, yes, there are certain things we need to just, going back to week 1, don't say anything negative to your, spouse or whatever. Is that week 1 or week 2?
I don't know.
It doesn't matter, but
could have been last week for all I ever.
I know it's not last week, but that's a good exercise at first. But you do have to be able to communicate, because you need to make it so that not everything is an argument, or not everything is. I'm just going to tell you about all the things that I'm upset about, because then it's just negative town, right? But you also need to be able to communicate effectively, and otherwise you will become bitter. And it will be very hard, because the resistance grabs hold of that and won't let go.
Yeah.
And you'll get deeper and deeper and deeper down that path. So Ephesians, right? Ephesians 4:31.
Just verse 31?
Yep.
Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice.
So, I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Just really do your best to push that all away.
Yeah.
So that you don't have that growing resentment. Because if you do, if you think that there's something that you may resent down the line, you need to talk about it. Because if you don't talk about it, and you let it get that far, it'll be real hard to come back. And you'll start thinking, that I'm not getting what I deserve. I don't have happiness. Well, how many things could you have fixed or talked about down that path until it became a habit? And now your habit is that you don't go on dates. You don't go do this, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so now it's going to be a lot harder to come back. It's like when you gain too much weight, right? You get really unhealthy. It's really hard to come back, right? And whether that was your fault or not, like if you fought that battle, it's hard. It's hard to come back. And it sucks. And you have to make a lot more sacrifices then than you would have before.
Yeah.
So anyway, any other thoughts about that? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Bitterness was just one thing that I knew I needed to work on a little bit. I mean, not so much now, but I feel like before this was something I'd prayed about. I didn't word it as bitterness, but I guess that's what it was. I can't lie that sometimes having a lot of things I'm relied on for it can stress me out a little bit. And sometimes I just felt like kind of like the
underappreciated?
No, like the whole, your foot's broken. Okay, just take some Tylenol and you'll be all right, babe.
Not Tylenol.
Yeah, Motrin. Just take some Motrin, you'll be all right. Kind of vibe. Like it was just like, but I ultimately, came to this realization of knowing like I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. Kind of what we were talking about. I don't deserve anything for doing what I'm supposed to do. You know what I mean?
You deserve, like, yes.
No, from your perspective, you want to make me feel appreciated,
I want you to
which
feel
I do appreciate. But the ultimate conclusion that I came to was I don't deserve anything for doing what I'm supposed to do. You know what I mean? And I shouldn't approach it seeking approval or grace and gratitude and whatever for just doing what I'm supposed to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I think it's also good that like
But that
you were able to communicate some of that bitterness, right? And
Yeah.
say like, hey, I'm struggling with this. And so we were able to talk about those. And you were, and I wasn't doing very well at showing you the appreciation that I want to show you, right? Whether you deserve it or not. Like, I wasn't showing you the appreciation that I would like to give you. And so knowing that, you didn't see it. Okay. I know I need to do something different than what I'm doing. What I thought I was doing wasn't right, or wasn't. And especially because, we've been together 6 years or whatever. Like,
Wait, did we miss our anniversary?
no, it's next week.
Oh man. Oh, I almost forgot.
But dang it, I'm sad she forgot. She realized. I was hoping I could get it in there without her realizing.
Almost. Shoot, I gotta get thinking.
But
Anywho.
so, I still think we still are learning things about each other.
Oh yeah.
We still are,
I'm still learning things about myself.
Yeah. And we're still, like growing and understanding our relationship.
Yeah.
And that's huge. That's a really big deal. That's really good for us to, I don't know. I still think that people, it seems weird when you're like, you've been together 6 years and you didn't know that about that person, like that story or something. It seems weird. But man, how many things just don't come up? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, this happened to me one time, or whatever. And, and so you're learning about each other and you need to be able to communicate.
Yeah.
And then your life is changing. When we first got together, we didn't even have a place to live. Yep. Neither of us did, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we were still hopping around in apartments and barracks rooms and stuff, and trying to figure out what we were going to do. Like, no idea. And then, and then we did have a good place to live. And then we did have an okay apartment. And then we got a house. And then, and it changes every time, right? Mm-hmm. And you go to a new church or you go, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things. Start a business. Like, the dynamics change constantly.
Yeah.
And so you need to learn that there's a new challenge that you weren't dealing with before. Mm-hmm. Or changing a diet completely. That can be a big deal because you need somebody to back you up in that too. Or it'd be nice, right? Like, and so...
And it kind of, for some people, will change also the way the other person eats a little bit. And
so there's a whole, there's a whole level of things. And you have to be working together through that. And not be bitter, right? And so that leads us to day 39. Love lives in reality. And it gives us John 16:33. You will have suffering in this world. Be courageous. I have conquered the world. I think that, this week, man, I've just got so much to talk about.
Just go for it. I'm fine.
I feel bad. You guys are just you probably feel like you listen to me talk way too much anyway, so.
It's fine.
But man, this week hit me really hard. And so, I at least had a lot of thoughts about it. But, this is sort of what I was talking about before, right? Which is, we have this thing where we think, how many people think that a relationship is supposed to be like X? I read a book, the book says that it's supposed to do this. Or I read The Notebook, right? I watched the movie. That's what love is supposed to be. When you think about, okay, first of all, it's 2 hours of somebody's, even if that was a true story, it's 2 hours of their life that you just saw, right? Not all the other things that happened in between all those moments, right? Again, all those things you see on social media, you're seeing snapshots, not all the other things that you went through. If you talk to anybody who's been married a really long time,
they tell you it's work.
yeah. And they're going to, and you may not even believe it, because every time you see them happy, and you see these little things about them that you're like, wow, that was really sweet. Like after 50 years, they're still like that. That's cool. But man, you know how many times they struggled? Because it's reality, right? And you're gonna run into hardship. So be courageous. Fight through it. And this is where I was thinking very, very strongly about the thing that kind of broke our heart this week, right? And you always think the grass is greener, but it's because you don't have any of the experience on that side yet. Mm-hmm. You know how many, me and probably my best friend, right? We talk about this all the time. The worlds we've lived in or been a part of, we constantly think, oh, this is going to be like, once I get there, it's going to be better. Once I get here, it'll be better. Once I get here, it'll be better.
Yeah.
Once, oh man, this organization, I'm not what I need. I can't wait but I have to, this is the stepping stone to get here. And you're like, and it's going to be better. Finally, I'm going to be able to do what I'm supposed to do. Boom. You get there and you're like, wait, this isn't it. And to most people, a lot of those places are like, oh, whoa, that's so cool, or whatever. But it's because you got snapshots, not the whole world.
Yeah.
And the reality is, the only time we've ever been completely happy, the only thing that always comes back is that disciplined emotion, disciplined love, focusing on God, choosing God. That is the only thing that comes back every time, no matter where we are, no matter what we do. It's the only thing that comes back, and I'm never in a moment of regret about it. Ever. I can think about a million things that I've done, or places that I went, and I'm like, man, what if I didn't make that choice? I don't regret them, because I think I just burped, and it probably smells terrible.
I'm just going to hold my breath for a second.
But, what if I didn't go do the things I did? Maybe I wouldn't be paralyzed, right? There's a million things I could think about. Boom, boom, boom. Or, the places I went that I'm like, did I learn anything there? Did I get anything from that? Couldn't I have done more that I was seeking to do had I not made that decision, or made this decision instead, and so on? And the reality is that it all is, you want to talk about all is vanity, right? Solomon just hitting it hard. And Ecclesiastes, pretty sure. If I'm messing that up, I'm sorry. But, it's all vanity. The only thing that's not is God. I can't think of a single time I did something God-related that I'm upset about, or that I question whether I should have done it, ever. And maybe that's because I'm lucky. If you can think of something, please put it in the comment section. But, I can't. And I think that's pretty huge. And I think that so many people they want that instant gratification. And they don't realize, if you take responsibility for the things you're responsible for right now, that you said you were going to take responsibility for, mind you, and you take those and you hold out until you're past this hardship, you're going to be a lot happier than if you change now.
Yeah.
That's one of the lessons I learned very early in my old job, which is, if you quit now, you will never be happy ever again. And in fact, a guy I was very close to, committed suicide because he quit. And I'll never forget the last time I talked to him. No one ever thought it was coming. And it was a shocker, but he just couldn't deal with the fact that he knew the mistake he had made, right? And so I guess my point is that in your relationship, you made a commitment, right? Whether it was a commitment just on a piece of paper because you did it through the government or whatever, You made a commitment to that person. And you better stick to it. And if you do, you'll be much happier down the line. Even if we're just looking at money, right? Or whatever. Like, divorces are not cheap. You know, it's never easy or whatever. You know, I mean, just go through it all. And the reality is, you will be happier in the end. And you might not see it. It's just like the older son, right? The prodigal son. He's considerably happier than his brother will be in the end. Because his brother's still going to have nothing, right? He's going to have to work on that farm for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. He has no inheritance. Everything he gets will be whatever the rest of the people working get, you know? But that older son, one day he's going to own everything. And when he wants to have a party, he gets to have a party, right? Or whatever. And so I just think love living in reality. If you don't mind, will you also, on finishing up this sort of line of thought, 1 Peter 4:12 through 16. And so we have to realize love lives in reality and accepts that. And so you need to reflect on the things that you are doing and the things that you've committed to and realize that work relationship you have or whatever is not real.
Yeah.
You don't go home to that every day. And you may think that you will go home to that and it'll be different. But it's not. It will go right to where you are now if you do not change who you are. Maybe you will change, right? Maybe you will change and so that relationship will be different. But it's not because the person was different. It's because you were different, right? And you have to live in reality and realize that's the truth. It's not because you love this person and don't love that person. It's because you chose to love that person and not that person.
Yeah.
Right? And so, anyway, so that leads us to the reading for the day, which is 1 Peter 4:12 through 16.
Dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted because of the name of Christ, you are blessed, for the Spirit of glory and of God rests on you. If you suffer, it should not be as a murderer or thief or any other kind of criminal, or even as a meddler. However, if you suffer as a Christian, do not be ashamed, but praise God that you bear that name. Where am I supposed to stop?
16.
Okay, so that was it.
Yeah, so the whole point is, you know, if you have to take pride somewhere, have pride in being Christian, you know, in being a follower of Christ and understanding, like, this is where I'm seeking to go. And you won't ever go wrong.
Yeah.
That's what I've been talking about, right? Kind of, you know, I mean, I have been ridiculed plenty of times for it. It's funny to me that people think, you know, that there's this whole conversation about, you know, you're not accepted if you're not a Christian. Because my whole life, I felt the exact opposite. I felt like people didn't accept me because I was a Christian. Right?
Yeah.
I felt that people, you know, even though in my old job I would never even talk about it with anybody. I'd get called a Bible thumper, even though I never said anything to anybody about it, period. They just saw me with a Bible and they're like, oh, you're one of those. You know, and whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt me. You know, I rejoice in it or whatever. Right? Especially when some things go on down the line and guys come to me and they're like, I can't handle this. How are you doing it? You know, or like, I mean, probably one of my best memories in life is when, you know, a friend of mine came to me, very, very Christian, anti-religion dude. And he'd been struggling for years and with some stuff that had happened previously and, you know, some people who died and stuff. And he came to me, he's like, you've never talked to me about this. You've never pushed it down my throat. But I just see how you handle stuff, and I want to know now. And that was probably one of the coolest moments for me because, man, what an honor to have somebody, trust me because of God, right? And what God had done in my life. And so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, that goes to
Day 40.
Day 40. Love confesses sin. And it gives us Psalm 32:5, which is, I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you took away the guilt of my sin. This talks a lot about sort of David and stuff like that, and how David gets super defensive when he commits the sins he commits, right? And even goes really hard against those. Mm-hmm. And that makes me think about modern society and how some of the most outspoken people, I just heard about a very disgusting thing that happened in Hawaii, and the guy was all over Twitter talking trash to everybody who's talking about these things are problematic and calling them those people and blaming everybody else for those things. And then it turns out that he just got picked up and convicted for all of the things he was telling people that they were trash or that they were doing, even though they were actually talking out against it and saying it shouldn't, hey, this is wrong, we shouldn't do it, right? And man, I also know if there's something that I have that I'm struggling with, like a sin that I'm really keeping deep, sometimes those things are the things that set you off the most, Yeah. It's probably why some of the things that really get my resistance going have to do with coveting, right? And people who get frustrated, about, or they're like, well, you have these things, or you have those things, or you have that. And I'm like, so what? And I'm like, that's not a big, I don't have a whole lot of love for that, right? So when you're not confessing your sin, your sins and accepting, hey, I'm sinning in this way.
Yeah.
It's so easy to not have love. To not love people who are doing the same thing. Because you don't love yourself about it,
Yeah, that's true.
And you're not giving yourself grace, so why should you get grace?
Yeah.
And so this was kind of a big deal. I was like, ooh. The defensive-ness and anxiety that you have when you're sinning,
Yeah.
And I've seen it all over the place. I've seen it in my life, when you're committing a sin, you're doing something not so great, you're hyper defensive and anxious about that thing, and so, I just kind of said that the things we hate the most often are those that we commit. I don't know. This is one of the days that I didn't have a whole lot to talk about, so maybe this is where you can pipe in and stop me from this being the Lars podcast instead of freaking, Lars and Rae hosts over here. Maybe we need to change the intro for this one. That's just your host, Lars, and just...
It's too much work. But, so for today I wrote about how important it was to be honest with God and your spouse. And that's something that I've grown to be really thankful for, is being able to tell you where I feel that I'm going wrong, and being able to have you pray for me, pray with me, talk through those things with me, and obviously God as well. But, the more you keep those things a secret and keep them inside, I imagine it of being like something with roots. And the more you try and hide it, the more you try and cover it, the deeper and stronger those roots are growing. And, so whether it's a journal that you write in or something, it's really important to start to reveal and uncover and talk about and pray about those things that you are having trouble with. And maybe you go to your pastor and talk about it, or who knows, because praying about it and talking to God about it is obviously the number one thing you should be doing. But I will say there's something, it adds another element to have a real person to talk to about it and to pray with you. And
I just thought of something. So in that exact same vein, you literally you put out a video on Instagram, right, the other day about our dog Brew.
Yeah.
And you guys go ahead and go look for it or whatever. But our dog Brew's special. And not very many people, understand what he has to go through. And what we have gone through trying to help him, just be able to be a dog and be able to continue his life. And we've been ashamed of it too in a lot of ways, right? And harbored a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Because
there's a lot of judgment.
Yeah, because we're afraid people are judging us because they don't know the whole story. And they don't understand, the alternative is something that you would hate us for too, right? Or, maybe even you would commit but don't realize, but you would still talk crap about somebody or whatever. And, but he has to wear, a partial muzzle in order to, be safe during the day. And we don't do it because we hate him at all. We love him so much.
Yeah.
We've cried so many tears about him and, done so much, more than I think, certainly more than my family ever would have done when I was a kid.
I think more than majority of people would ever do.
And
I think a lot of people would try.
Yeah, I just don't. I know there were times I thought we were crazy. I'm like, are we seriously spending this much or doing this much? But it was like the alternative
is just unacceptable to us.
Right. So. We're not going to quit. And so, we found ways that he can continue to grow and we can continue to help him to, survive and thrive and be happy. And you made that video and you told me right after. And I know this isn't exactly the same thing as, a sin, because I don't think we were committing a sin. So it's not like you were confessing your sin.
Right.
But you said, you're like, I feel like a weight has been lifted off me.
Yeah.
By posting that video. And it wasn't the video that we've thought about a million times, which is, explaining everything and giving this big defensive explanation. It was just, this is the explanation. Boom. This is why, and here's the real quick and easy, simple. And so in the same vein with like confessing your sins, right? It does the same thing. Letting people know. Having someone you can, and that's where a spouse is huge.
Yeah. Because
a spouse that you actually put your trust into. That's another reason why this thing this week really breaks my heart, because this person's spouse knows all the worst things about them.
Yeah.
And yet still gives them grace.
Yeah.
Over and over. And I don't know anybody you could trust better. Like, I don't know how you could check trust in any other way. They have every
reason to leave
not
them.
Be together. Yeah. And she's still, and it's still this very difficult situation.
Yeah.
And so if you can trust your spouse, though, and you can tell them the things that are hard, or whatever, like, I tell you simple things like, man, there's really sort of gross ad with, half naked women all over the gross ad or whatever, just wearing skimpy clothes or whatever. And it makes me uncomfortable, right? I don't like it.
Yeah.
And being able to share that, helps. It does almost help keep me away from some sort of, anything bad that could be related to that, right? Because I'm distancing myself. Like, I know, I'm not trying to hold something from you. You're not trying to hold something from me. I can't even remember, but there have been times you come home to me and you've been like, this happened with this person, and I just want to make sure you're okay. And I'm like, with it, she's playing basketball in her sports bra.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah, so she's playing basketball at the basketball court by herself. And she was, she's like, I just got to tell you that Like, would you be upset if I did it in, and it's not like a skimpy sports bra. It's like,
a sports
bra. Like,
yeah.
that you literally, it's nowhere near skimpy, right? And I'm like, okay. But I know for you, like, it mattered because it helps you to know, hey, I can be comfortable about this, telling him, and I can be sure that he's okay with it or whatever. And you still decided to keep your really hot stuffy shirt on to play basketball outside or whatever, and it's funny, but little things like that, it's not necessarily confessing a sin, but you know that it could lead there, right? Mm-hmm. And confessing it and talking about it and keeping it in the open helps us to be better.
Yeah.
Helps us to, keep God in the right mind and know where our love is.
Making that your norm.
Right.
It's making that your reflex.
Yeah.
To
working the muscle.
Yeah. To always do that and that be your first instinct.
And choosing that person, right? You're going to be the person I go to if something's not comfortable, or not right, or I'm not good with it or whatever, and you don't ever, the resistance can't grab a hold of something now because you're keeping it secret.
Right.
And so, nope, like, I know she knows, so it's not a problem.
Yeah. I cannot keep secrets. If I at all have an inkling of, like, hiding, I, like, have to word vomit it to you because it's just so not in my nature, and it feels so wrong. And it doesn't even have to be anything bad, like the silliest thing. Like, I'm ashamed that I had this mean thought about someone or something, and I'm like, oh, I can't. I gotta tell Lars.
She is pretty funny about that, but...
Yeah. But it's good, though, and then it helps me to bring it back to God in a more put together way rather than feel like I'm just all over the place trying to, not that it's wrong to talk to God and not feel like you have all your words correct or anything, because God knows what's on your heart and what you're trying to say. But I don't like going to God like that because then I just feel like I'm going down all these rabbit holes.
Well, I think it helps you reflect, right? And you're actually you're bettering yourself, and so you're able to more clearly understand this is what the actual problem is.
Yeah.
So with that, I think the last 2 days are pretty easy peasy. Thank the Lord, because it's you guys are probably tired already. I think we're probably like at an hour and a half or something. I don't know. Hopefully not. But day 41 is love seeks mentors, and it gives us Hebrews 3:13. Encourage each other daily while it is still called today, so that none of you is hardened by sin's deception. And it specifically asks us to seek out good marriage mentors. And I think that's something I really need. It's, I really respect our parents, and stuff like that, and being able to, and would like to ask them and talk to them about these things, but
it feels like it shouldn't be our family.
But I don't think it can be, right? Yeah. Because no offense, but our parents are probably going to pick the child, right?
Yes, I was going to say they're going to be a little bit biased.
And so you can't. So that's hard, and it's like, but those are the people we probably respect and know the most. So it's like, man, okay.
Yeah.
And then, and I think
they
that's why
are
communities,
mentors in other ways,
right? But I think that's why, like, a relationship mentor. That's why you need community, and I think that's where we suck.
Yeah, we do.
And that's why we're doing this, right? Is trying to
build a community.
It's hard for us to get out into a, and we live in the middle of nowhere, and we like it that way, right? And so it's not like we can go outside and meet a bunch of people and, at a party or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, we're trying to get better at that, and going to a certain church, and or going to a specific church so that we actually have eyes on multiple people and people see us multiple times, and can actually develop that a sort of rapport and relationship.
Yeah. We're working on it.
But Yeah, I think that's huge. I think a mentor is a really big deal. And one of my biggest, I've always wanted a good mentor. And I've had a couple of them throughout my life. But then I always feel like I can't go to them after that time, like that I was specifically attached to them for whatever reason, like, oh, they're my leader or something like that. After that, I always fall off. And that's a bad thing about me too.
Yeah.
I'm kind of bad about that in general. Like once I'm not
Same.
directly in your orbit, I drop out.
Yeah.
And, I'm not a good networker.
Can I read what to look for in a mentor?
Yeah, please.
So it says, to find a good mentor, look for a person who already has the kind of marriage you want. You look for a person whose heart for Christ comes first before everything else. You look for someone who doesn't live by his or her opinions, but by the unchanging word of God. Start praying for God to send this kind of person or couple into your life and be watching for how he will answer.
So I think that's my, the reason why I have a hard time with it is I feel like it's very hard to find people that I don't feel judged by. That's probably on me. Or that I feel like, yeah, it's on me. Whatever. I'm an immature child is really what it comes down to, and I want to feel like I am, it's weird. Like maybe I don't want to feel like I'm being spoken to like I'm a child, right? But I think sometimes maybe I do need to be spoken to like I'm a child in this regard, right? Like I'm still learning or whatever. So how do I find somebody who's willing to, I think I need to pray about that. But really the reality is that what I got from this is like, I need to pray about this. Because I want a good mentor. I want us to have something like that. But I don't really pray about it. I realize, I don't think there are very many times that I've prayed for a mentor.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I need to do is pray for a mentor that I think the other thing is like, it's very hard to find people who have similar experiences to me, who also happen to be Christians.
Yeah.
Right. Or if they are, I feel like they're so far out of my league that that I feel uncomfortable about it. That's what it is. Right. It's like either I feel like I don't have a connection to them because we don't share similar experiences, or I feel like they're so far out of my league that I'm not good enough to have them as a mentor or whatever. And so that's what I need to figure out and pray about, right? And so,
shall I read the prayer then?
yes, so that was going to be my thing.
It says, Lord, send us godly marriage mentors who will encourage us and keep us accountable. Give us moldable hearts to learn from them and to apply what they teach us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And so, yeah, I need to pray that a lot more.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to say about that?
Nope.
And then that leads us to day 42. Love delays anger. We've been, this is a theme, right? Patience, anger.
Yeah.
Now we're here. And it gives us Proverbs 19:11.
A person's insight gives him patience, and his virtue is to overlook an offense.
So this is one, don't have a spirit of offense. That's a huge thing to grow and get better.
Yeah.
Right? And then this goes back to something I talk about all the time. And we talked about this with patience, right? I think last week or the week before. And I sort of talked about, like, if you think about something beforehand and you go, this is how I should respond, you will better respond in the future. And that's why having patience, you'll still have patience in that regard, even if you had to respond quickly.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've put thought into that experience and that response.
Yeah.
Call it the OODA loop or whatever: observe, orient, decide, act, right? And that's how we, there's a whole psychology frame around that's how we make decisions and how we deal with specifically, quick decision making. And, it's funny, but like my best responses are always the ones that I've thought about. And one of the ones that I think about regularly when I'm driving around is like, man, if I ever get caught speeding, not that I speed very much, I'm actually kind of a grandma, but, like, I always think, okay, if I happen to make a mistake and I get caught speeding, I'll be driving and I'm like, make sure you know the response is to be calm, be collected, and just accept that you made a mistake and tell them that, right? And more than likely, at least, from the cops in our family and stuff like that I've talked to and, that I know or whatever, like if you accept that and you're like, yeah, I'm sorry, I was speeding. I know why you stopped me.
Yeah.
Like cops are like, oh, cool. Finally, somebody that's not going to fight me and try to, pretend like they don't know what they were doing, right? And because I know sometimes it just happens. Somebody like, well, I'm just following the flow of traffic. Then you look down, and you're like, ooh, crap. But if I think about that beforehand, I know my reaction is going to be better.
Yeah.
And I almost go like,
well, and a lot of people's relationships have common issues that come up. There's reoccurring themes and stuff like that. So you can mentally prepare for how you're going to respond next time this situation or this one comes up. That way you have a plan and it can hopefully go better than it did the last time. And then hopefully eventually you won't encounter that situation anymore. And that can happen for your work life, whatever it is. If you find yourself encountering certain situations regularly, come up with a plan for how to deal with them.
Well, and that's one of the, I think there's almost like this weird like rule of the universe, this law of the universe that if you're prepared for it, it'll never happen, right? And I think, my dad jokes, right? Like if he's on a call, then nothing bad will happen, And I have that very same thought about many things. I'm like, well, if I'm prepared for all the things that could happen here, and I do all my thoughts and I do all my experiments or whatever, then we'll always be good. If I do all the right things, like this scenario is never going to occur, and so cool, And if I'm wrong, then at least I'm in a better place, right? And so I think that was kind of a cool sort of end to the week, is to sort of go, okay. Now, all of these things that you've learned up to this point about patience, anger, so on, how about we start thinking about how you're going to handle them in the future so that you will have, you will be able to delay your anger because you've already made a good decision and you already know how to react in that scenario. So instead of that quick anger response that we, would normally have, now you have this really clean, simple, good response, right?
Yeah.
So with that, I think that leads us, anything else you wanted to talk about specifically? Sorry guys, I know I talked pretty much the whole week. I swear I feel bad, but sorry, Ray. But
doesn't bother me.
That kind of leads us to the questions for the week to leave everyone with.
What would happen if you decided that you were always going to delay your anger before expressing it? What if you chose to seek out more information and conclude the wisest course of action before you allowed yourself to respond?
I think these questions are so very important, especially in today's day and age, where we have so much information flowing towards us. And so everything's about sensationalizing because that's what makes money, right? And how many times do we freak out about something only to realize that's not what happened?
Yeah.
Or you don't ever realize that's not what happened because you never looked into it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Or now, because of your anger response, because of your angry response to whatever was happening, you have so much pride, you refuse to back down. And now you won't even pay, like, no matter how much negative information.
You put yourself in a weird corner.
And
where you either have to be extremely humble, or now you're overflowing with pride and you won't.
And
and
a wise man is silent.
Dishonesty as well,
Well, and man, the fool speaks out, the wise man is silent, right? That's one of the reasons why it's good to be quiet sometimes, because, and why, something like this podcast kind of weirds me out, because I'd like people to know less. because there are so many times I might be wrong right away, but I can correct myself more easily. And my pride, the resistance can't get a hold of me because I haven't got anything that I put my pride into, you know? And, you know, how many times, and it sucks because people lose credibility, and they may have said 99 awesome things that were completely correct.
Yeah.
And then the one thing that they decide to die on that hill because of pride, because they didn't take the time to delay their anger.
Yeah.
They lost it. And that sucks. You know, and we all could learn from that.
Yeah.
The whole world could learn from that. And we're sort of being taught through the way media works, right? That we're supposed to have these quick responses. There's so much information. I don't know where I just saw this, but there is more. This is back in 2011. But in 2011, there was a study done, and they realized that there was 237 newspapers, like the New York Times newspapers, worth of information in one person's average day of emails.
Wow.
237 days of newspapers worth of information in one person's emails.
We're going on a thing here.
I know. But my point is that there's so much information that we're being forced into thinking we can't absorb it all.
Yeah.
And all you have to do, you need to just get the highlights, right? And the reality is we need to slow down, delay our anger, and get all the information we possibly can.
Yeah.
And so patience, love, and that will always, you know, I believe that will always lead us to love, right? That's the best way we can love. It's by delaying all of that. And that's the whole point of this.
Yep.
So think
Good
about that.
stuff this week.
Move
babe.
on that.
Good job.
You know, we talked forever. I am so sorry.
It's all right.
But yeah, so with that, you know, that's week 6, the Love Dare 365.
We better have video this week.
Yeah, sorry about last week. After trying to shoot it 3 times, so doing this 3 times in a row, and then realizing on the third one that we didn't have video, but we had audio at least on this one, so
We just went with it for our own sanity.
yeah. Sorry that might be lazy, but we're learning.
Yeah.
So thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. Please, you know, if you have any questions or comments or thoughts, leave them down in the comment section.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll respond.
And
there aren't very many of you yet, so
try to share this video with people that you think could benefit from it, or, you know, might enjoy this community. You know, that's the whole point of us doing this, is just trying to grow and reach more people and have more conversations with people so that we can learn and grow as well.
And I want people to help me get wrecked.
Yeah.
I want people to, like I said, I need a mentor, and it's hard for me to find people with similar experiences, or, you know, or people who actually are, you know, well down the path of Christendom or whatever, and can help us learn. And maybe it's not as hard as I think, but I know that the internet's probably the fastest way to do it. And so we can reach people all over the world.
Yeah.
And hopefully you all can help us be better.
Yeah.
So thanks.
In the kindest way possible, get wrecked.